The universe had a sense of humor, and Emperor Vex'thor was about to become its latest punchline. I watched from my position in the Imperial Archive, as the human prisoner was dragged into the throne room, shackled in quantum-locked restraints that could hold a dying star. The Emperor sat on his obsidian throne, all 7 of his eyes gleaming with what I can only describe as predatory anticipation. He had been waiting for this moment, planning it for cycles. Vex'thor rumbled, his voice echoing through the cavernous hall like distant thunder. This is what passes for intelligence among the humans? Pathetic. The human, a surprisingly ordinary-looking male named Marcus Webb, simply raised his head and smiled. Not the terrified grimace we expected, an actual smile. I should mention that I am Krell, Junior Archivist of the Dominion, and I have served the Imperial Court for 3 decades. In all that time, I had never seen a prisoner smile at the Emperor. Most species had the good sense to grovel, beg, or at least look appropriately terrified. Marcus Webb did none of these things. "You know what I find funny?" the human said, his voice calm, almost conversational. "You dragged me across half the galaxy, threw me in a cell for 2 weeks, and you still haven't bothered to ask my name. That's just rude." Several courtiers gasped. One of the younger nobles actually fainted. "You did not speak to Emperor Vex'thor like that. You simply did not." The Emperor's mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement or rage. With Vex'thor, it was often hard to tell. "Your name is irrelevant, human. You are specimen number 743. Nothing more." "Marcus?" the human continued, as if the Emperor had not spoken. "My friends call me Mark. You can call me the guy who is about to ruin your entire week." Now that got everyone's attention. Vex'thor leaned forward, his massive frame making the throne creak. "Ruin my week? You are a primitive creature from a backwater world that only discovered faster than light travel 3 generations ago. Your entire civilization is a cosmic infant. What could you possibly do to inconvenience me?" Marcus tilted his head, and that smile grew wider. "Well, for starters, I could tell you that those quantum restraints you are so proud of, they have a design flaw. See, they work great on energy-based life forms, even pretty good on most carbon-based species. But humans? We are weird. We have this thing called bioelectricity, and if you know how to manipulate it just right." The restraints fell to the floor with a metallic clang. The throne room erupted into pandemonium. Guards rushed forward, plasma rifles charging with that distinctive whine that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Courtiers scrambled backward, knocking over ceremonial urns that had stood untouched for centuries. And I, foolish Krell that I was, simply stood there with my datapad, recording everything for the archives. "Stand down!" Vex'thor's voice cut through the chaos like a plasma blade through flesh. "I want to see what this creature does next." Marcus stretched, rolling his shoulders like he had just woken up from a nap. "Thanks for that. Those things were murder on my circulation. Now, where was I? Oh, right. Ruining your week." He walked, not ran. Walked casually toward the throne. Every guard in the room tracked him with their weapons, but none fired. Vex'thor had given an order, and in the Dominion, you followed orders or you died. Sometimes, both. "You see, Vex," Marcus said, and I noticed he had dropped all formality from the Emperor's name. "Your empire has a problem. Actually, it has about 47 major problems and roughly 3,000 minor ones. But let's focus on the big one. Your entire economic system is based on the extraction and processing of helium-3 from gas giants, right?" The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "All 7 of them. How do you know about our resource? Distribution? Because I have been in your prison for 2 weeks, and you have terrible network security. I mean, really terrible. I have seen human teenagers with better firewalls than your Imperial database, but that's not the point. The point is that helium-3 extraction is killing you, slowly but surely. You have depleted 70% of your accessible reserves, and at your current consumption rate, you have maybe 20 years left before your entire empire grinds to a halt. I checked my datapad. The human was not wrong. In fact, those numbers matched classified reports that I had seen only in the deepest, most restricted sections of the archive. How had he accessed that information in just 2 weeks? Vex'thor's expression shifted from amused curiosity to something else. Interest, perhaps. And I suppose you have a solution? Not just a solution, Marcus said, stopping about 10 feet from the throne. The solution. Humanity figured out sustainable fusion 8 years ago. We do not need helium-3 anymore. We use a process that works with materials you probably throw away as waste. I can teach you how to implement it across your entire empire in less than 5 years. You would have unlimited power. No resource wars. No supply chain problems. You would be the emperor who saved the Dominion. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Vex'thor spoke. Why? Why would you help us? We invaded your homeworld. We slaughtered millions of your people. We took you prisoner. Why would you offer us salvation? Marcus's smile faded, and for the first time, I saw something else in his eyes. Something cold and calculating. Because I am not offering you salvation, Vex. I am offering you a deal. You implement my technology, you stop your invasion of Earth, and you release every human prisoner in your empire. In exchange, humanity helps you transition to a new energy paradigm, and we establish trade relations. You get to stay emperor. Everyone wins. And if I refuse? Then your empire collapses in 20 years, your rivals swoop in to pick apart the carcass, and history remembers Emperor Vex'thor as the leader who was too proud to accept help from a primitive species. Your choice. I had to admire the human's audacity, even as I catalogued every word for the historical record. He had walked into the heart of enemy territory, escaped impossible restraints, hacked our most secure systems, diagnosed our empire's terminal illness, and offered a cure with terms attached, all while maintaining that infuriating smile. Vex'thor stood, his full height nearly reaching the vaulted ceiling. You have courage, Marcus Webb. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. However, you have made one critical error. Oh? And what's that? You assumed I care about the future of the Empire more than I care about crushing humanity beneath my heel. You assumed I am rational. You assumed wrong. The Emperor raised one massive claw, and I knew that signal. It meant death. Swift, brutal, and immediate. But then, something unexpected happened. A new voice echoed through the throne room, sharp and commanding. Father, wait. Princess Lyra stepped out from behind one of the massive pillars that lined the hall. She was Vex'thor's youngest daughter, brilliant and ambitious, with a reputation for strategic thinking that rivaled the Emperor's own. She was also, if court gossip was to be believed, deeply frustrated with her father's increasingly erratic decisions. Lyra, Vex'thor growled, this does not concern you. On the contrary, it concerns me greatly. It concerns all of us. She moved to stand beside Marcus, her iridescent scales catching the light. The human speaks truth. Our reserves are depleting. The outer provinces are already experiencing power shortages. If we do not act soon, we will face rebellion long before we face extinction. You would side with this creature over your own father? I would side with logic over pride. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. The tension in the room could have been cut with a blade. Father and daughter stared at each other, and I realized I was witnessing something historic. The Empire, always so stable, so certain, was teetering on the edge of something new. Marcus, wisely, kept his mouth shut and let them argue. If I accept his deal, Vex'thor said slowly, I appear weak. I appear as if humanity forced my hand. And you appear as a fool who chose destruction over survival. Which do you prefer? The Emperor turned his gaze back to Marcus. You say you can implement this technology in 5 years? I can have the first reactors operational in 6 months. Full empire-wide implementation in 5 years. Maybe less, if your engineers are quick learners. And you swear that Earth will uphold its end of the agreement? Trade relations? Technology sharing? No hostile actions? Marcus nodded. You have my word. And unlike some species I could mention, humans actually honor their deals. Usually. Mostly. Well, we try really hard to, at least. For a moment, I thought Vex'thor might still order the human's execution. His claws flexed, his eyes narrowed, and every muscle in his considerable frame tensed. But then, surprisingly, he laughed. A deep, rumbling sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the palace. You are either the bravest being I have ever met or the most insane. Possibly both. He sat back down on his throne, the decision made. Very well, Marcus Webb. I accept your terms. But know this. If you fail, if this is some elaborate deception, I will not simply kill you. I will sterilize your entire world and scatter the atoms across the void. Do we understand each other? Crystal clear, Marcus said, and extended his hand in that peculiar human gesture of agreement. Vex'thor looked at the offered hand with confusion, then amusement, then something approaching. Respect. He reached out with one claw and grasped it carefully, mindful of his strength. Then we have an accord, the Emperor declared. Guards, release all human prisoners. Princess Lyra, you will oversee the implementation of this new technology. And you, Marcus Webb, are now officially a guest of the Imperial Court. Try not to hack any more of our systems. No promises, Marcus replied cheerfully. As the guards dispersed and courtiers began whispering frantically among themselves, I made a note in my records. Today, the Empire changed. A human walked into our throne room as a prisoner and left as the architect of our future. Emperor Vex'thor, for all his power, may have just been outmaneuvered by a species we considered primitive. The irony is not lost on this humble archivist. But that was only the beginning. Over the next few months, Marcus proved to be as good as his word. Better, even. The fusion reactors he designed were not just efficient, they were revolutionary. Energy output increased by 300%, while resource consumption dropped to nearly zero. The outer provinces, which had been on the verge of revolt, suddenly found themselves with more power than they knew what to do with. And Marcus? He became something of a celebrity, not just in the palace, but across the entire empire. People wanted to meet the human who had saved them. They wanted to understand how this primitive species had developed such incredible technology. But I noticed something else. Something that I recorded in my private notes, away from official archives. Marcus was not just teaching us about fusion reactors, he was teaching us about humanity, about their resilience, their creativity, their absolute refusal to accept defeat. Every conversation, every interaction, was a lesson in what it meant to be human. And Princess Lyra was learning faster than anyone else. I watched them work together in the engineering bays, designing the next generation of reactors. I watched them debate philosophy in the palace gardens, arguing about the nature of consciousness and free will. I watched them laugh together at jokes I did not quite understand, sharing some connection that transcended species. The Emperor watched too, and I was not sure he liked what he saw. One evening, about 4 months into the project, Vex'thor summoned me to his private chambers. This was unusual. Junior archivists did not get private audiences with the Emperor. We were background noise, record keepers, invisible. Krell? He said as I entered, bowing low. You have been observing the human? Yes, Your Majesty. It is my duty to record all significant events for the archives. And what have your observations revealed? I hesitated. What I had noticed felt dangerous to speak aloud. But you did not lie to the Emperor. The human is Remarkable, Your Majesty. His knowledge, his adaptability, his strategic thinking. He has integrated himself into our society with surprising ease. Too much ease, perhaps? There it was. The real question. Your Majesty? Vex'thor turned to face me fully. I accepted the human's deal because it was logical, because we needed his technology. But I am beginning to wonder if I have invited a plague into our empire. Not a plague of disease, but of ideas, of change. My own daughter now questions my decisions openly. The nobles whisper about human ingenuity. Even the military has begun studying their tactical doctrines. Tell me, Krell, in your honest assessment, have I made a mistake? I thought carefully before answering. Your Majesty, change is not inherently bad. The human has brought us solutions to problems we did not even realize we had. But you are correct, that he has also brought change. Whether that change is good or bad may depend on your perspective. Diplomatic words for a simple truth. I have given a human the keys to my empire, and now I wonder if I can ever take them back. Before I could, to respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Not the usual security alerts, but something else. Something that made my skin prickle with primal fear. What is happening? Vex'thor demanded. A guard burst into the chamber. Your Majesty! The Outer Rim! We are under attack! By whom? The Kreth Horde, Your Majesty. They have breached our defensive perimeter. 60 warships, maybe more. They are heading straight for the capital. The Kreth Horde. Our oldest enemies, our most brutal rivals. They must have seen our resource problems as weakness, an opportunity to strike while we were vulnerable. Vex'thor's eyes blazed with fury. Mobilize the fleet, all available ships to defensive positions, and find the human. If his technology can save our energy infrastructure, perhaps it can save us from annihilation as well. As the guard ran to carry out orders, I could not help but think that Marcus Webb's week of ruining the Emperor's plans had just extended considerably, and somewhere in the palace I was certain the human was smiling. The war room was absolute bedlam when I arrived. Datapad clutched in my trembling hands. Generals shouted coordinates, tactical displays flickered with angry red dots representing Kreth warships, and in the center of it all stood Marcus Webb, looking remarkably calm for someone who had just learned an armada of genocidal warriors was bearing down on us. They will hit the outer stations in 40 minutes, General Zeph barked, his forearms gesticulating wildly at the holographic display. We have maybe 20 ships in position. They have 60, possibly more, arriving through secondary jump points. So we are outgunned 3-1, Marcus observed, stroking his chin in that peculiar human gesture of contemplation. Not great odds. Not great? Vex'thor slammed his fist on the tactical table, causing several junior officers to jump. It is a massacre waiting to happen. And you stand there making observations like you are, commenting on the weather. Actually, Your Majesty, I am commenting on opportunity. Every eye in the room turned to the human. Opportunity? Princess Lyra stepped forward, her scales shifting to that particular shade of orange that indicated intense curiosity. Please explain how certain death qualifies as opportunity. Marcus grinned, and I recognized that expression now. It was the same smile he had worn when he first entered the throne room, the smile of someone who knew something everyone else had missed. Your ships are powerful but slow, right? Big engines, heavy armor, lots of firepower but terrible maneuverability. The Kreth ships are faster, lighter, designed for hit-and-run tactics. Yes, we know our own fleet capabilities, General Zeph snapped. What is your point, human? My point is that you have been fighting the Kreth the same way for centuries, probably longer. You line up your big ships, they dance around you, pick off your vessels one by one. It is predictable. Boring, even. Vex'thor's mandibles clicked dangerously. If you have a suggestion, make it. If not, be silent. Oh, I have a suggestion. Several, actually. First, Those fusion reactors we installed on the outer stations? They are not just power sources. With a few modifications, they become very effective bombs, really big bombs, the kind that make stars look dim by comparison. The room went silent. You want to blow up our own stations? Lyra asked, though her tone suggested she was already following his logic. Not blow up. Weaponize. Think about it. The Kreth expect you to defend those stations with ships. Instead, you evacuate them, rig the reactors to overload on command, and when their fleet gets close. Marcus made an explosive gesture with his hands. Surprise! General Zeph pulled up calculations on his display, his eyes widening. The blast radius would be enormous. We could take out 12 ships per station. At least, Marcus agreed. But that is just the opening move. For the main event, we need to talk about your ship designs. Specifically, how incredibly inefficient they are. I thought Vex'thor might actually kill the human right there. The Emperor's ships were legendary, crafted by the finest engineers in the Empire over hundreds of years of warfare. To call them inefficient was to insult the very foundation of Dominion military might. But Princess Lyra laughed. Actually laughed. He is right, father. I have been reviewing the specifications. Our vessels dedicate 60% of their power to shielding and weapons, 30% to propulsion, and only 10% to systems integration. It is terribly unbalanced. It is tradition. Vex'thor roared. Tradition is just peer pressure from dead people, Marcus said cheerfully. And dead people do not win battles. Here is what we do. We reroute 30% of shield power to engines. Your ships become twice as fast, maybe more. Sure, they can take less punishment, but if the enemy cannot hit you, who cares? The Kreth will adapt, one of the admirals protested. They always do. Not to this, they will not. Because while they are trying to figure out why your ships suddenly move like fighters instead of freight haulers, you hit them with Phase 2. Lyra, you want to tell them? Or should I? The princess moved to the display, her movements precise and confident. The human and I have been working on something, a distributed shield matrix. Instead of each ship maintaining its own defenses, they link together, sharing the load. 3 ships become effectively one supership, with triple the protection and triple the firepower. Impossible, General Zeph declared. The synchronization required, the processing power, the coordination, is absolutely possible, Marcus interrupted. Humans have been doing network warfare for generations. We will just be applying those principles to your technology. Trust me, it works. Probably. Well, it should work. We will find out soon enough. Vex'thor stared at the human for a long moment, and I could practically see the calculations running behind those 7 eyes. Accept the plan and risk everything on human ingenuity, or stick with traditional tactics and face almost certain defeat. How long to implement these changes? The Emperor finally asked. The reactor rigging? 20 minutes per station. The ship modifications? Already uploaded to your fleet's mainframes. They just need to activate the new protocols. You already modified our warships without authorization? Marcus shrugged. I figured you would say yes, eventually. Saves time. For a heartbeat, I genuinely believed Vex'thor would order the humans' execution despite the approaching enemy. But then, something unexpected happened. The Emperor laughed. That same deep rumbling sound I had heard months ago, but with something different in it. Something that might have been respect. You are either going to save us all or doom us spectacularly. Either way, it will be memorable. General Zeph, implement the humans' plan. All of it. Evacuate the outer stations and prepare them for detonation. Fleet commanders are to activate the new combat protocols immediately. Your Majesty, surely we should test these systems first. Run simulations. We have 35 minutes until the Kreth arrive. That is our simulation. Move! The war room exploded into controlled chaos as orders flew, and personnel scrambled to execute a battle plan conceived by a species most of them still considered primitive. I recorded it all, knowing that this moment would define our empire's future one way or another. Marcus pulled Lyra aside, speaking in low tones. I moved closer, shameless in my duty as archivist. You need to be ready for what comes next, he was saying. Your father is brilliant, but he is also traditional. If this works, it will prove that everything the Dominion thought it knew about warfare is wrong. That is going to shake things up considerably. If this works, it will prove that humanity deserves a seat at the table as equals, not subjects or enemies, Lyra replied. That is going to shake things up even more. Yeah, well, one apocalypse at a time. First, we deal with the Kreth. Then we can worry about revolutionary societal change. Is that what this is? Revolution? Marcus met her gaze steadily. Princess, the moment I walked into that throne room and offered your father a deal, revolution became inevitable. The only question is whether it happens peacefully or violently. I am kind of hoping for the peaceful option, personally. Before Lyra could respond, the proximity alarms screamed their warning. Here we go, Marcus muttered, moving back to the tactical display. 63 vessels, each bristling with weapons, each commanded by warriors who had spent their entire lives perfecting the art of destruction. They moved in their standard formation, a scattered cloud, designed to avoid concentrated fire while allowing maximum flexibility. It had worked for them countless times before. Not today. Outer stations 1 through 7 are evacuated and armed, a technician reported, awaiting detonation command. Not yet, Marcus said calmly. Let them get closer. Let them think we are abandoning the stations without a fight. Let them get greedy. Human, if you have miscalculated, General Zeph began, then we are all dead anyway? So what difference does it make? Wait for it. Wait for it. The Kreth ships advanced, converging on the seemingly defenseless stations like predators on wounded prey. I found myself holding my breath, watching the distance close on the display. Now, Marcus said quietly. Detonate, Vex'thor commanded. 7 fusion reactors, each containing enough power to energize an entire planetary system, overloaded simultaneously. The tactical display went white with the intensity of the explosions. When the sensors cleared, 21 Kreth vessels had simply ceased to exist. Another 8 were drifting, crippled, and powerless. Good heavens, I whispered, forgetting for a moment that I was supposed to be impartially recording history. Phase 1 complete, Marcus announced. Now comes the fun part. Fleet commanders activate distributed shield protocols and execute attack pattern Webb Alpha. Webb Alpha? Vex'thor raised an eyebrow. I named it after myself. Seemed appropriate. The Dominion ships, previously lumbering and predictable, suddenly moved with unprecedented speed and coordination. Groups of 3 linked their shields, creating overlapping defensive barriers that deflected the Kreth's initial attacks with ease. Then they returned fire, not as individual vessels but as unified strike forces. The Kreth scrambled to adapt, their commanders clearly confused by the sudden tactical shift. They tried their usual hit-and-run approach, but the Dominion ships were too fast now, too coordinated. Every retreat was cut off, every attack anticipated. They are breaking formation, an analyst reported. The Kreth are attempting to withdraw. Do not let them, Vex'thor ordered. No survivors, no witnesses. I want this victory to be a message that echoes across the galaxy. The Dominion does not simply endure, we evolve. The battle, if it could even be called that anymore, lasted another 18 minutes. When it ended, the Kreth fleet was nothing but debris and fading energy signatures. The Dominion had not lost a single ship. Silence filled the war room. Then, slowly, it was replaced by cheering. Officers embraced, generals congratulated each other, and even Vex'thor allowed himself a satisfied smile. Marcus simply nodded, as if this outcome had been obvious all along. So, that went well? Anyone got anything to eat? I am starving. Lyra laughed, the sound bright and clear amid the celebrations. You just orchestrated the most decisive military victory in Dominion history, and you want food? Strategies make me hungry. It is a human thing. Later that evening, after the formal celebrations had concluded and the various dignitaries had departed, I found myself once again summoned to Vex'thor's private chambers. This time, Marcus and Lyra were there as well. Krell, the Emperor began, you have witnessed everything that has transpired since this human entered our lives. As Imperial Archivist, I require your honest assessment. What has Marcus Webb brought to the Dominion? I considered my words carefully. Your Majesty, he has brought change. Fundamental, irreversible change. Our energy infrastructure has been revolutionized. Our military tactics have been transformed. Our very understanding of what is possible has been expanded. But more than that, he has brought a question we must now answer. And what question is that? If a single human can accomplish all of this in mere months, what might humanity as a whole achieve? And more importantly, what does that mean for the Dominion's place in the galaxy? Vex'thor nodded slowly. The very question that has been troubling me. We have always defined ourselves as superior, as the apex civilization. But this human has demonstrated that superiority is not about age or tradition. It is about adaptability, creativity, willingness to change. With respect, Father, Lyra interjected, I believe you are looking at this wrong. The question is not about superiority at all. It is about partnership. Humans think differently than we do. They approach problems from angles we would never consider. That does not make them better or worse. It makes them complementary. A pretty sentiment, Vex'thor replied. But the universe runs on power, not pretty sentiments. If we acknowledge humanity as equals, we diminish ourselves. Or, Marcus said, speaking, for the first time, you could stop thinking about it as a zero-sum game. Humanity does not want to replace the Dominion. We just want a chance to exist without being conquered or enslaved. You could be the Emperor who brought humans into the galactic community as partners, who recognized that diversity of thought is strength, not weakness. That would be a legacy worth having. You speak as if you have already won, Vex'thor observed. Have I not? Your empire depends on my technology now. Your military victory today was achieved using my tactics. Your daughter, your heir, has become my advocate and friend. I have not conquered the Dominion with weapons, Your Majesty. I have done something far more effective. I have convinced you that you do not need to be my enemy. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You are dangerously arrogant for someone still within reach of my claws. Not arrogance, just confidence. There is a difference. Besides, you are not going to kill me. You need me. The Empire needs me. And deep down, I think you are starting to realize that needing humanity is not the weakness you thought it was. I held my breath, waiting for Vex'thor's response. This was the moment everything could collapse. All the progress, all the changes, all the hope could die right here with one wrong word. Instead, Vex'thor did something I had never seen before. He bowed his head, just slightly, just enough to acknowledge a truth he could no longer deny. You have won, Marcus Webb. Not through force, not through deception, but through simple, undeniable utility. You have made yourself indispensable. Very well. I will formally petition the Imperial Council to recognize Earth as a sovereign world and humanity as a protected species under Dominion law. We will establish trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and military cooperation. And, in return? Marcus asked. In return, you will continue to share your knowledge. You will help us rebuild our empire into something stronger, something better. And you will never, ever hack our systems without permission again. Marcus grinned. Deal. Mostly. The hacking thing is really more of a guideline than a rule, but I will try my best. That will have to suffice. Lyra, you will serve as official liaison between the Dominion and Earth. You seem to understand the humans better than anyone else. It would be my honor, Father. As the formal arrangements were being discussed, I made my final notes for the day's entry in the Imperial Archives. Today, the impossible occurred. Emperor Vex'thor, ruler of the Dominion, acknowledged that humanity had earned its place among the stars. A species we once sought to conquer has instead become our partner, our teacher, our ally. History will record this as the day the Empire grew up and learned that strength comes not from dominance, but from cooperation. Marcus caught my eye and winked. The gesture was meaningless to most species, but I had learned enough about human expressions to understand it. He knew exactly what he had done. He had walked into an empire as a prisoner, and walked out as the architect of its transformation. 3 months later, I attended the formal signing of the Earth-Dominion Alliance Treaty. Representatives from both worlds gathered in the Grand Hall, which had been modified to accommodate human environmental needs. Vex'thor sat on his throne, Princess Lyra at his right hand, and Marcus Webb standing beside her as an equal. The human ambassador, a sharp-eyed woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, reviewed the terms one final time before signing. This treaty establishes Earth and the Dominion as sovereign equals, committed to mutual defense, open trade, and cultural exchange. Neither party may interfere in the internal affairs of the other without explicit invitation. All previous hostilities are formally ended, and all war reparations are waived in exchange for technology-sharing agreements. Agreed, Vex'thor declared, pressing his seal to the document. Agreed, Dr. Vasquez replied, adding her signature with a flourish. As the assembled dignitaries applauded, Marcus leaned over to whisper something to Lyra. She laughed, that same bright sound I had come to associate with genuine happiness rather than political courtesy. Later, I asked him what he had said. I told her that 6 months ago I was a prisoner facing execution. Now I am attending a treaty, signing as a hero of the Empire. The universe really does have a sense of humor. And what did she say? She said that 6 months ago she was a princess in a dying empire. Now she is helping build something new, something better. And that maybe the universe is not so much funny as it is full of unexpected possibilities. Some truths are too intimate for public record. The years that followed brought changes that would have seemed impossible before Marcus Webb walked into our throne room. Human engineers worked alongside Dominion scientists, creating technologies neither species could have developed alone. Cultural exchanges flourished, with humans fascinated by our history, and we equally intrigued by their art, music, and literature. Military cooperation turned former enemies into allies, and together we faced threats that neither civilization could have survived independently. Emperor Vex'thor ruled for another 2 decades before peacefully transferring power to Princess Lyra, who became Empress, in a ceremony attended by representatives from 30 different worlds, including Earth. Marcus Webb served as her chief advisor, though rumors suggested their relationship had evolved beyond mere professional courtesy. As for me, I continued my work as Imperial Archivist, recording the transformation of our civilization from isolated empire to galactic community. My crowning achievement was the completion of the Webb Chronicles, a comprehensive history of humanity's integration into Dominion society and the changes it brought. On the final page, I wrote, "We thought we had captured a primitive being and instead discovered a mirror that showed us our own limitations. We thought we were bringing enlightenment to a lesser species and instead learned that wisdom comes in many forms. We thought we were the pinnacle of civilization and discovered we had barely begun to climb." Marcus Webb did not conquer the Dominion with weapons or force. He conquered us with ideas, with friendship, with the simple demonstration that different does not mean inferior. In doing so, he saved us from our own arrogance and gave us a future worth building. History may record him as Earth's champion, but the Dominion knows him as the human who taught an empire how to evolve. And for that, we are eternally grateful. I sealed the record and placed it in the Central Archive, where it would be preserved for future generations. Somewhere in the palace, I could hear laughter. Human and Dominion, mingling together in harmony. The Emperor had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, had given them the opportunity to save us all. The universe, it seemed, did indeed have a sense of humor, and we had finally learned to appreciate the joke.